Hello, this is Dread, and in today's video topic, we're going to be talking about something a little bit different this time. So, recently, I was playing some multiplayer with some friends, and I realized, hey, wait a moment, multiplayer isn't dog do anymore. What do I mean by that? Well, over the past 2 years now, multiplayer has definitely gone through its fair share of challenges and problems to the point where I kind of just shelved it for a while and completely ignored it up until very recently because I was playing with a friend from Australia and playing with a friend from Europe, and my play experience was not terrible. I was like, wait a moment, I can actually play the game now. And I realized this. I was like, hey, Perry, you want to play some co-op with me? And he's like, sure, let's do it. And that's what ended up making us leveling these characters. Now, before we get into that, if you haven't already, I would heavily suggest leaving a like on the video and subscribing to the channel, as that is the best way of currently supporting me. It's the best way of showing me you want more videos like this one. Now, let's about the builds that we re-rolled into. So we actually ended up, I actually ended up buying another Last Epoch account because sadly there's nothing that allows us to have like a private league reroll or anything like that. So for us to be able to play COF together, we would, without, my stash and his stash, we would have to play on completely different accounts. Hopefully they'll fix that one time, but it would be nice to have some private league shenanigans, right? But we decided to play two co-op builds. So the idea was I didn't want to just play random build A and random build B. I wanted to play two synergistic builds that were made for each other. And that's what we ended up doing. So my build right now is a Bone Curse Warlock. The idea is we apply Bone Curse to everything, and whenever allies, i.e. Perry, hits a target, they do about 20% of my spell damage as, flat crit damage. And the idea is for him to spam that as much as possible. Now, you must be wondering, Dread, 20% of your spell damage does not sound like that much damage. Well, it isn't in regards to Acolyte, because Acolyte has been balanced around Bone Curse's existence as it has existed for a very long time, and the devs very well know what Bone Curse does and how much damage potential it has, so they make sure to shaft anything that could even remotely proc it a very large amount of times. Hence why, Bone Curse is very strong, but it's never been like absurdly strong. But thankfully, through co-op, we can kind of break this and ignore all those limitations placed by us and utilize different classes for a different amount of hits. So for instance, my friend Perry here, he is playing a blast rain marksman. The idea is he's trying to go for as many hits as possible. He doesn't care about damage. He doesn't care about he doesn't care about how much damage he does. All he cares about is how many hits he can proc in a short amount of time frame. So here he's casting Blast Rain, which is 5 projectiles. Then those 5 projectiles will shoot 5 detonating arrows. Then those 5 projectiles will also shoot out 5 acid flasks if he sets it up that way, right? And then all of those projectiles will also apply Spark Charge on hit, which then, can be an extra hit for Bone Curse. And all of this combined leads to me hitting a very large amount of time on single target because, whenever he hits something, I hit it as well, and my damage procs on it. So all I need to do is just focus on scaling my damage through the roof. I don't have to care about on my build. I don't have to care about how to proc the damage. I don't have to care about how am I going to proc this damage for clear. I don't have to care about any of that. All I have to do is just scale my damage and survivability up through the roof. And that's also what he's done as well, where he's just scaled his hits per second and also his survivability. Like for instance, it has opened up a lot of options that normally wouldn't be available to us. Like for instance, I'm running the node on Chthonic Fissure that gives me a very large amount of flat damage if I'm self-tormenting. I'm also running, of course, the flat damage on Rip Blood as I cast it, and I'll start building some cast speed here soon. And of course, Perry is just simply building as much attack speed as possible and as much mana sustain as possible, so you can sustain the egregious 12, 15 mana blast rain that he's spamming. And we realize what's really cool too is he can run a dragon song. So if he builds some crit, and thanks to the actual the actual bow itself gives him base crit as well for fire skills, which is convenient, it means that he can hit even more with the Dragon Song procs. So the Dragon Song procs aren't doing any damage. He's not, doing anything with them by himself. But every single time he crits, it's another chance for another Dragon Song proc. And that's really cool because in theory, once he gets to 100% crit chance eventually, that is effectively another like 30% more hits or something like that, which is another 30% more damage for us because, all he cares about is hitting the enemy. So in the footage here, you can see I bone curse some things and all of a sudden everything pops, etc. And it's been a pleasurable experience actually playing, like multiplayer as like an actual multiplayer build instead of just, playing whatever random build that we thought of. Like this is kind of cool, kind of like working together to do damage because as Perry put it, like we're two halves of the same coin. Like we're both support builds because my build doesn't function without Perry and Perry's build does not function without me. But when we're together, both the builds function like very well. We were kind of worried about the damage until we ended up doing our last 90 mono and unlocking empowered monos and getting our first Harbinger. Our damage apparently is completely fine. We're doing plenty of damage for what we're doing, considering this is like just like a little bit of playtime. We did actually go a lot slower than we normally would in terms of pushing for progression. Like for instance, we're level 80 by the time we're finished with the level 90 zones. Usually you're like level 70 when you're finished, but we were just having way too much fun. Turns out just playing a marksman build that doesn't absolutely suck doggy do is a great experience. It's great being able to actually, right click enemies with a marksman build and have them die in a few clicks. It's a very satisfying experience and it let us just kind of just, shooting the breeze and just relaxing. This is also kind of like what I would call a vacation from normal content because I'll be honest, like, Ellie's kind of in a downturn right now as we're waiting for more content and stuff like that. So we were kind of bored and we wanted to do something else. And this is the something else. It's been very entertaining overall. Like it's been a nice break. Now, what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to go in game and I'm going to talk about my portion of the build more in detail. If you want to know Perry's portion of the build, I'll be linking his video down below. This will be the first update on the build and we plan on making a final update when we're done, killing Aberoth and pushing corruption and stuff like that. Now, let's go in game and talk about it more in detail, shall we? All right, so here we are in game with the character. We're going to go over it very briefly as this is not supposed to be the full guide. This is just me talking about like my experience with multiplayer so far or building a build around multiplayer. So like I said in the intro, we are not focusing on our own clear and our own damage. Like we're focusing on our damage, but like we're not proccing the damage. So we're scaling Bone Curse as hard as possible through, just grabbing as much more damage as possible while also, grabbing the Mark for Death and trying to paint the whole screen with the Bone Curses. So what's happening is I'm going ahead of Perry and I'm just cursing everything for him. And then he can just simply go up and right click them. And not only does he do the damage, I also leech from that. So whenever he procs Bone Curse on enemies, I leech from here and I also leech from here, meaning that he sustains me, meaning I just need like a large amount of HP pool. Pretty much that's what I plan on doing, like putting on a Twisted Heart, going for as much HP as possible and having him, scale my survivability that way, my sustain. And then all I need to care about is just scaling damage as much as possible. So right now, as we're leveling, I'm just running a double Phantom Grip setup. We're trying to get as much crit as possible. We're running a Marina's Lost Soul for extra spell damage right now. Eventually we'll slam these and see what we can get, right? I don't know if Marina is going to be my endgame item. There might be some other options that might be better, but this is what we're going to be doing right now. Like, for instance, there's a Gate Stab specifically. They give 130 flat instead of just 80, like the 91 flat here, but it increases the mana cost of everything. But the thing is, I'm not casting that often, so it might actually end up being completely fine to do that. Now, my mana sustain would be a little bit higher if I needed to do that, but we can simply just go into Bone Curse and just grab the 40% mana efficiency, and that would fix all of my problems right there. So maybe the staff is the way to go, because the double Phantom Grip seems to be staying, as it's just a lot of extra base crit, and it allows me to like just run as little crit as possible on my gear. Also as well, what's really interesting is since Perry is running marksman, he has access to critical strike vulnerability, meaning I only need to get this number to 80% crit. I don't need to go all the way to 100% crit. I just need 80% crit because he applies the rest of the 20% crit. And if we really need to, I can even run acid skin on single target and go up even more if I really need to. But I would like to be crit capped in monos because, you know, trash is usually what actually kills you, not actual enemy like bosses and stuff like that. So yeah, other things that we're doing with this build, I think the main way that we're going to get defenses, like I said, is just stacking as much HP as possible. We're just going to be like a 5 to 6 to 7k HP acolyte build at the end, and we're just going to have parry leech all our life back utilizing bone curse. And as we scale the damage, we'll get more, you know, survivability. Now, Chthonic Fissure is very interesting in this build as we're utilizing Beacon of Torment, of course. Not only are we getting the Endurance Threshold buff, so that will make us tankier, it's also going to give us a lot of flat spell damage, and we're also getting a bunch of flat spell damage from Rip Blood currently. I'm not entirely sure how I feel about Rip Blood. I don't know if I want to run it over Chthonic Fissure or running Rip Blood specifically. I might end up running something else, like a different skill that might give me better damage. Right now, I'm not entirely sure what I should go for. There's a few interesting options. So there's Spirit Plague. Spirit Plague gives us 12 ward on hit on single target. That doesn't sound like much, but when parry's hitting the boss that many times, this is a lot of extra survivability. So this is always an option. Also, it's another curse for us since we're a warlock. Other ways that we can scale damage, probably, I'm not entirely sure. Those are like the main ways we can scale damage. Like, there's not that many other buff things. We are reaching withering caps. We don't need soul fees right now, so I'm not entirely sure how I'm going to push the damage even further. But that's pretty much what my character looks like right now. I don't know what it's going to look like in the future, but all I know is we're probably just going to try to squeeze up as much damage as humanly possible without actually casting or hitting things. Now, with all that being said, this has been Dread. I'll have to go do something else. Bye.